Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Mac Movie Review Show. Today is a little different. Mac is not here to join us today, so just me, Kristin, aka Miss Flamingo, and that's not stopping us to have a very special episode today. We are joined by the producer, writer, director of the new series on Crackle, Playing with Power, the Nintendo story, Jeremy Snead.
So Nintendo started back in the 1880s as a trading card company. So they were in the gaming business way before we probably ever even called it the gaming business.
It may be the most addictive toy in history. Nintendo video game.
My mind was blown.
My mind was just blown.
Blew my mind, changed my life.
I was blown away. NES was so magical.
A quantum leap.
Watching and yelling at the screen. Oh, it's right there. Oh, don't miss
Christmas, when I was 8 years old, ripping open the packaging.
Nintendo, now you're playing with power.
Welcome, and thank you.
All right.
And this is like a huge, like I said, we talked a little bit earlier, huge opportunity for us to talk to you. And I first want to say congratulations on the series. How does it feel to have your project, your baby, out into the world?
That's funny. Yeah, calling it my baby is definitely apropos. It's you work on these things as a filmmaker, anyone that's an artist, a musician, a filmmaker. You put your heart and soul into it, whatever the subject matter is. And we've been on this one for about 4 years.
Oh my God!
And and when COVID hit, we kind of had to transition to working. Me and my team of about 8 editors had to transition to working from home for about 8 months, and that was a challenge. But making it across the finish line, getting a great partner like Screen Media and Crackle to put it out for the world to see for free. People don't have to pay, they don't have to sign up. They can just go to crackle.com and watch it for free. Is very rewarding and surreal. So just glad to have it out there. I hope people enjoy it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I explained earlier, I'm not a huge video game fanatic, but there was something about this series that really drew me in. And from beginning to end, you go through the history of Nintendo. What was it like getting all these people together, from content creators to authors? You have insane amount of people working on the series, and the one person who actually blew my mind to have on the actual show was the co-founder of Atari, Nolan Bushnell. What was it like to bring him on, and people like Will Wheaton on the series?
Yeah, for sure. Nolan, I've known Nolan for almost 10 years. So I directed a documentary that came out in 2014 called Video Games the Movie, and that also features kind of some color commentary from folks like Will Wheaton, as you mentioned. And I had reached out to Nolan, I think it was like 2011 or 2012, while we were filming that, and he was very gracious to grant us an interview for that project, and we've kind of known each other since then and seen each other at industry events like E3 and Classic Gaming Expo. And so when it came to Nintendo, it's obviously Nintendo has this rich history that goes back to 1880s. But when they get into the electronic age, obviously they're Atari was the start of this. You've got Magnavox and all those other companies, but I wanted to have a voice from the industry for every era. From Atari to Nintendo to Sega to PlayStation, and so having Nolan in there to kind of give voice to that piece of the history was really important and great to have. Nolan he's the godfather,
Yeah, it was really interesting to see how you just not only focused on Nintendo, but you looked at the competition it had. So seeing that was really eye-opening, and to, like you said, give a voice to other outlets and impact people who impacted Nintendo. So why focus on video games? Where does your love of video games start?
That's a great question. I wish I had a more creative answer, but I'm kind of a cliche in that I'm a child of the '80s, and I had an Atari. I think my dad played it more than I did in the late '70s, early '80s. I was born in 1977, but my first big being activated as a gamer was with the original 8-bit NES, and lots of amazing memories with that system. And I remember specifically I think I'd had my NES for a year or so, and I got a copy of Nintendo Power magazine, and seeing the game laid out, where you could see the entire level as like an art piece. I made that connection of somebody drew this, and then it became a video game on my screen. And I think that's when I got bit with the bug of man, I love games, and I've played games since I was a kid. And then combining that with, when I sort of became a filmmaker, has, resulted in things like Video Games the Movie, and then my series Unlocked, and now Playing with Power. So
yeah, because basically you got to form your whole career combining your passion and your hobby. So how does it feel to be bringing both worlds together for this series, and then even your previous work? So looking at your documentary, so how does it feel?
Yeah, no, it's I mentioned, the word surreal before. It is kind of surreal. It's but I will say this, as you're, my advice to any aspiring filmmaker or artist or designer or game developer is, you hear this before just in psychology, which is, joy in the journey. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey.
Exactly.
And it's very true, because, you get to these moments like now, like Playing with Power's coming out. Me and my team have been working on it for 4 years, and, you kind of get to that mountaintop and you realize that's cool, but it's never like what you think it would be. Like, oh man. So then the value becomes the experience itself, going through and meeting these people from Nintendo, and working with my team, and working with Sean Astin on the narration, and producing the show. So I think I've learned that, as an artist, as a filmmaker, the past decade or so, of yes, this is great, and it's always fun when it comes out, but there's also a lot of joy in the journey of just the doing of the thing.
I think that's the part of the beauty of filmmaking, is the journey and seeing it all come together. Because to me, filmmaking is like a puzzle. You figure out each step as you go, no matter how many obstacles you face. So seeing that in the final project, it's astonishing. So did you study filmmaking in college, or did you what's your path with filmmaking? Where does that all stem from?
It's interesting because I actually gave a talk a couple of years ago at Savannah College of Art and Design when my series Unlocked came out, and I was talking to the film students there, and I don't think they realized, they didn't know that when I was in high school. So I graduated high school in 1995, which is really aging me. Okay, well there you go. And when I graduated, I had a scholarship actually to go to Savannah College of Art and Design. But, growing up, me and my family, it's like we weren't poor, but we definitely didn't have a lot of discretionary income. And so they couldn't afford to send me, even with the scholarship, combined with the out-of-state tuition. It was just too much. And so I didn't go. And when I was giving that talk at Savannah College of Art and Design, what I told them was, I said, I would never encourage someone to not go to college, but I will also say that college is not for everyone. Some kids, some students just aren't cut out that way. They're more of a blaze their own trail. They want to learn by experience. And some people can't learn that way. They have to have the sort of the structure and the discipline of school. For me, I've always been kind of a self-made businessman, entrepreneur, and the same was true, to answer your question, of my filmmaking career. I just sort of got interested in it around 2005, 2006, and started reading books on screenwriting and like, okay, what does this lens do? What kind of camera can I get to shoot an interview? And just sort of self-taught.
Yeah. A lot of it, I can say, is a lot of self-talk, lots of reading and lots of research, doing it on your own, and just basically interacting with others that are interested in the same field. So you mentioned earlier Sean Astin, huge in, Lord of the Rings, worked on numerous animation shows. What was it like meeting him for the first time and bringing him on board with your previous projects? Because he served as a narrator in the video game documentary. So
Yep.
Was it an easy yes for him to say, hop on board with your newest project?
I don't know if it was an easy yes, but Sean and I have been friends for a little over 10 years, and we met at a convention years ago. So my production company, Media Juice, we produce TV commercials and trailers for video games and film and television studios, and so I'm always kind of on the convention circuit. I go to San Diego Comic-Con every year, and E3 and CES, and Sean also goes to a lot of conventions just as being a celebrity, making appearances, doing panels, signing stuff. And our paths kind of crossed at one of these conventions, and I told him what I was working on at the time, which was my first video game documentary. And he served as the narrator on that film, Video Games the Movie, and we kind of became fast friends. And fast forward to when I started kind of having the idea for Nintendo, I said, "Hey, man, I'm thinking about doing a documentary series about Nintendo. Would you want to, come on board?" And he was super excited about it and came on as the narrator and also as our executive producer. And he's really had a lot of valuable input to the creation of the show, which I think just makes it that much better.
Yeah, because he's like a staple, like in nerd culture, pop culture. Seeing what he's done over the career, it's kind of like mind-boggling. So because the series feels like a nostalgic portal for anyone from the 80s and even early 90s. So do you feel how this series is nostalgic?
Yeah, I mean, there's always that balance of, giving people the feels of like, oh man, for me, it's, like I said, it's the NES, it's the mid '80s. But for other people, it's like I've got some editors that work for me that's Pokemon for them, or that's the N64, or the Game Boy Advance, or that's the GameCube. So everybody kind of has their entry point of nostalgia, and what we tried to do with Nintendo is sort of provide all of those. So whatever your entry point is, we've got it.
Yeah, because the one episode that really got me hooked is because since I was like a late 90s kid, I had the Game Boy. So seeing that, I was like, okay, now this is what I'm talking about, where they had all the Mario cartridge games, because I used to trade them with all of my friends and my cousins, and we were just playing, trying to beat each other's scores. So seeing that part in the series really brought me down nostalgic and memory lane, and you can see that even with the content creators exploring that series. So does this inspire yourself to create a video game one day?
It's funny. I've had that question more often than I thought I ever would. Not yet. I know a lot of video game designers and lots of people in the industry. And I've always been an artist, and by artist, I don't mean that in the abstract way. Like, I'm an artist, I'm a filmmaker. I've always drawn and sketched and painted and done that since I was little and did cartoons. And so, my background and my sort of skill set lends itself to that, writing and drawing and stuff. So never say never. It might happen someday, but I don't have any current plans to develop a game.
If that was the case, what kind of game would you want to make? Would it be like a Mario-inspired series, or is this just like a Pokemon? Maybe something like a you could create the next Minecraft or Fortnite.
Hey, I'll take it. If I could do that, then I could. I look at like the like this big resurgence of independent game developers the past. I don't know, 5 to 8 years. You look at things like Indiecade and the App Store, and that, people can make a game and get it out there. I like a lot of the sort of retro side scrollers that people have been making, but
Right.
sort of like with uber enhanced graphics. So it kind of looks like an old Mario or Pitfall or Sonic game, side scrolling, platforming, but with the visuals are like next level. So,
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think if I ever did anything like that, I'd probably lean towards that, just because
Yeah.
mainly it'd be easier to produce. I think a big like next gen console game, it's like, well, you need $30 million minimum to to do that.
Okay, so one of my favorite episodes in the series is, like I said was earlier, which was episode 3, which it kind of explores the Game Boy. However, I learned a lot in that first episode when it explores going back all the way to the 1800s, late 1800s, and seeing that Nintendo goes back to like a simple card game. Did you know about that? And if you did, how did you feel? And what was one fact that you didn't learn, or didn't know before, I should say, that you learned from the series?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first time I had ever heard that was, I had read this. It's like a War and Peace coffee table book called High Score: The Illustrated History of Electronic Games.
Okay.
And it's just very exhaustive. And I think there might have been one little side panel at one point when they were talking about maybe the Game Boy or the Game & Watch, and they were like, oh, and by the way, Nintendo started as a trading card company. It showed these little Hanafuda cards. But I kind of, it was a little side note. I didn't really pay a lot of attention to it. So when I got into writing the script for this documentary, I really had to do a lot of research and read a lot of great books like Super Mario by Jeff Ryan, or Game Over by Jeff, I'm going to butcher the author's name. The author who wrote Game Over.
Okay.
And they really deep dive into that more. But yeah, it's it's very well documented, but it's one of those things that it's an Easter egg. You have to kind of be looking for it, and then once you see it, it's like, oh wow, look at this amazing. They go back to 1880s, and then from there did the deal with Disney, and then did toys and novelties and electronics, which then led to video games. So pretty fascinating origins.
It was pretty fascinating, that one, especially that first episode, to really introduce the founding of it all. But what was your favorite episode that you got to explore for the series?
Ooh, man, that's a tough one. I think normally my knee-jerk reaction would be, the NES, but I think since I've spent a lot of time on that in previous projects and kind of, scratched that itch, for me, going into the entry of PlayStation and Xbox, which was a time that I, was starting my studio and becoming a filmmaker, it was an area that I hadn't really, focused on in, as a video game documentarian. So that was a lot of fun to kind of dive into like, this Sony PlayStation and that whole relationship that they had. So yeah, I would say right now that's probably my favorite. That may change in the future, but that's probably my favorite part of the series so far.
That's awesome. But since we are a movie podcast, I have to ask, how do you feel about video game adaptations for film? Do you think they work, or it's like, nah, the film is the video game, since it is a story and has a beginning, middle, and end?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic that I was actually talking about. I had Sean Aston on our podcast a few days ago, and we were talking about this. Movies and games have this kind of weird storied, relationship where, you've got, speaking of Nintendo, it's like you have the infamous Super Mario Brothers movie that came out in, what was it, late 80s or early 90s with Bob Hoskins and not Paul, the guy that played Luigi. I'm blank. I still haven't had my coffee, so.
It's okay. I think wasn't it like John Leguizamo or something like that?
Yeah. Dennis Hopper played Bowser, and it's famously terrible.
Oh yeah.
And you know, the original Street Fighter movie with what's his name that plays him, Bison, and Jean Claude
Van Damme.
Yeah, it's like, you know, they're kind of funny to look back on now and kind of fall in that best worst movie category. And I don't know if there's been. I think the Resident Evil series with Mila Jovovich is sort of an exception. But those movies, they work as movies. I mean, they're popcorn. They're big. They're bombastic.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, but there's a lot of examples of where it doesn't work. I'm hopeful that The Last of Us, what they're doing there, the announcement of what's the fellow's name? Neil something.
Oh, Pedro Pascal. He's going to be playing the lead.
Joel, yeah, I forget the name of the filmmaker's name that is attached to it, but
yeah, it's the director of the Chernobyl series is set to be directing the first episode.
Yeah, and I'm very hopeful for that because Chernobyl was great. That filmmaker, you know, he's got some chops, and so I'm hopeful and also really scared because I love The Last of Us. It's one of my favorite video
games. You're not
games.
alone. There's a huge fan base for it, and also for the Mortal Kombat series that's set to come out like next month on
Yeah,
HBO
that trailer
Max.
looks great. It really did.
Yeah, there's a huge following for that to come out. So, but I know we had to start wrapping up soon. But one of the something that really stuck out to me was actually also in the very beginning of the episode, where it talks about success. And Sean Astin says, "This story isn't about a mere success. This is a story about ambition, competition, and standing your ground and letting the best ideas win." What do you think is the secret to success?
Ooh, man, you're getting deep on me. I like it.
I'm glad.
The secret to success. Well, I think it's. I'm going to steal something from my executive producer, Sean Astin here, because he was just talking about this the other day. I think the secret to success as an artist, which is all I can speak to. I've never been an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer, but I've gone on this journey of trying to be an artist, trying to be a filmmaker, and I think it's this balance of finding a way to support yourself. So, going and working a day job, whatever that is, and then finding a way to pursue what it is that you're wanting to do, whether that's writing, whether that's music, whether that's filmmaking, whether that's game design, and finding a way to balance both of those things to where hopefully, your passion can then turn into something that supports you. But I think so many people where they might have anxiety or get tripped up is like, well, I really want to do this, but this won't support me right now. So, I got to go do this. And they kind of treat it as an either or thing when, anyone who's blazed a trail, has had to do that, has had to figure out a way. Okay, I've got to keep the lights on. I got to pay my bills.
Mm-hmm.
But I love, making widgets, or I love making music, and finding a way to balance both of those until you can find a way to make your passion support yourself. And that's a little bit of an abstract answer because it's so specific to each individual. It's like only you know what you can do and what you can pursue as your passion. And I think that speaks to the voiceover lines that you just mentioned. It's like that's what Nintendo has done really well, in developing these new technologies and games and experiences over 140 years.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how it is a success story, knowing how much trials and tribulations and ups and downs that Nintendo face. It's not only looking at that, and also you can say it looks at yourself too, looking at your own journey and seeing what kind of obstacles that you come across yourself. So aside from the series,
Sure.
What is next for you?
I'm working on several projects. So I've had a couple of people recently ask me, like, are you gonna are you going to stay doing video game documentaries? You're kind of like 10 years into doing this, or are you going to do something else?
Yeah, but you're great at it. I mean, look how well it's been doing. I'm a fan. It's really great.
Thank you. That's very sweet. So there's no big, I don't have any big stake in the ground saying I'm done with video games or video game documentaries. But I think these next couple of projects that I'm developing with my team here at Media Juice are going to be a little bit more in the narrative direction. So kind of dipping my toe into that, and we'll see on the video game side. Probably someday come back to it. Maybe you
can direct a better Pixels movie. We don't need that Adam Sandler. Like we deserve a movie that could explore nostalgia tropes that does do that. I think we can get that from you. I think you would be an outstanding director to create something on the lines of that.
Well, I appreciate that. Hey, start a.
We'll start a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter project. But you said you also have a podcast. Where can people check you out?
Yeah, it's called the Media Juice Podcast. And if you just go to MediaJuice.com, there's a little button at the top there that says podcast. And if you click on that, it has all the episodes. And we're in, Apple Podcasts and Stitcher and anywhere you listen to podcasts, just look for the Media Juice Studios podcast.
Okay, cool.
And Sean Astin was our last guest, so check that out.
Yeah, I did see that. So I thought that was kind of cool just to tie in everything. So, but anywhere else that fans can follow you and see and check out, because you say you have a Twitch too?
Yeah, so pretty much all of my social handles, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, is just my name, Jeremy Snead. Last name is S-N-E-A, not E-E, but E-A-D.
Okay, cool. So we're going to make this episode short, but thank you so much, Jeremy, for taking the time to talk to me and to everyone about the series. Guys, go check it out. It's available on Crackle now, all 5 episodes. It's an easy binge. You're really going to enjoy it. I did. I can't wait to show it again to my boyfriend who's really into the video game stuff. So, guys, we'll be back on the next episode. Don't forget to follow me and Mac on Instagram at KFilmMingo, on Twitter and Instagram at MissFilmMingo. Thanks so much, Jeremy.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.